Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're embarking on what is honestly a fascinating linguistic detective story. We're looking at a 7th century text, Surah 43 of the Quran, also known as Az-Zukhruf, and we're going to uncover what turns out to be a shockingly modern, deeply psychological message. If you think ancient texts are just dusty, outdated rulebooks, you're going to want to lean in for this one, because we are stripping away centuries of assumptions to look at the raw mechanics of human awareness. Okay, let's dive right into this. There's this massive tension between what we assume foundational texts are saying and the deep, universal human condition they're actually addressing. We so often project our own modern obsession with doctrinal borders right onto these texts. But what if this specific manuscript isn't about building a new religion at all? What if, instead, it's actively diagnosing why human beings across all eras break apart and lose their grip on reality?
Section 1. The inherited assumption. If you ask almost any traditional source what this text teaches, they'll tell you it's all about theological categories, establishing prophetic succession, and warning against creating sects. Standard stuff, right? But look at the contrasting textual reality. When we strip away those external inherited frameworks and just look strictly at the vocabulary of the text itself, a totally fresh, startling reality emerges. It's not about competing religious teams at all. It's actually diagnosing a psychological problem. It's about a consciousness that logically knows the truth, but remains completely divided in how it operates. And the text actually doesn't hide this intention. Right in the opening verses, it makes an absolute claim of clarity. It explicitly says it's structurally designed to activate human intellect and understanding. It calls itself elevated and wise. Now, this is absolutely crucial because it establishes that the problem humanity faces isn't a lack of clear guidance. The signal is crystal clear. The problem is our reception of it. So how do we actually prove this textual reality? Well, we need to put on our investigator hats.
Which brings us to Section 2, Decoding with Tasrif. The primary tool we're using today is called tasrif. It's essentially the strict methodology of letting the text define its own terms. We are literally dropping all external dictionaries, historical commentaries, and cultural traditions. We're treating the text as a completely closed system. If we want to know what a word means, we analyze how this specific text uses that exact word across different verses and contexts. It is, by far, the most objective way to uncover the intended meaning. And when we apply tasrif, we get our first massive aha moment with the word shirk. Now, traditionally, you'll hear this translated simply as polytheism, worshiping multiple statues or false gods. But mapped across the text, its true structural meaning is actually about maintaining a divided consciousness. It's that incredibly relatable, very modern problem of acknowledging one ultimate source of reality while simultaneously fragmenting your mind over your career, your social standing, and all your daily anxieties. Now, what's really interesting about this is how people can intellectually acknowledge the ultimate creator, but at the exact same time split their actual loyalty. They make partners out of the very things that were created. It's like a cognitive dissonance. They know the truth intellectually, sure, but their consciousness is fractured by competing, everyday priorities. So what actually keeps pulling our consciousness into these fragmented pieces? Let's look at Section 3. The trap of ornaments. The answer lies in the very title of the surah itself, Zukhruf. It means embellishment, artificial shine, or superficial decoration. Think of gold plating, or in today's terms, maybe social media prestige. But here's the really fascinating part. The text doesn't actually say these ornaments are inherently evil. Wealth, beauty, creation, they are real things. But Zukhruf functions as a blinding distraction for a divided mind. We become so obsessed with the shiny surface that we entirely lose sight of the substantive reality underneath. This sets up the ultimate motif of illusion versus reality. On one hand, we have Zukhruf, those artificial shines, temporary material metrics, societal clout. Human systems absolutely obsess over this stuff. But on the other hand is the kitab, the permanent reality, the foundational, uncorrupted guidance. The tragedy of the divided mind is that it constantly trades real structural value for that cheap artificial shine. And you can see just how deeply this infection of Zukhruf runs in human societies. The critics in the text aren't even attacking the message itself. No, they're demanding that the truth be packaged with artificial social ornaments. They want the messenger to be a man of greatness, meaning wealth and status, from one of the major cities. It's pure gatekeeping, right? If the truth doesn't come with the right PR and social prestige, a divided consciousness will just outright reject it. Section 4. The Roots of Division. This all builds into a very predictable, almost historical human loop. Step 1, we receive perfectly clear knowledge and signs. Step 2, instead of integrating it, we turn away blindly to cling to what's comfortable, our inherited traditions, our social status, our shiny ornaments. Step 3, because we're prioritizing external attachments over internal truth, we break apart. Factions form. So you see, the division is not caused by a lack of clarity. The division is an active, chosen response to it.
Which brings us to another major plot twist in our linguistic investigation. When we use tasrif, the word shaytan, which is almost always translated as some mythological red-horned devil, reveals a much more profound psychological reality. It's an internal fragmenting force. It is a distancing function within our own consciousness. When we turn away from reality, this internal mechanism kicks in to reinforce our own cognitive blindness. So the crucial point here is that when you actively turn away from the reality of the most merciful, this internal fragmentation basically becomes your close companion. And look at the absolute most terrifying part of this trap at the end here. Yet they think they are guided. The greatest deception isn't believing a lie. It's the absolute illusion of feeling perfectly guided, perfectly righteous, while being completely and entirely disconnected from reality.
Section 5. Jesus as a sign. To prove this isn't just abstract theory, let's look at a specific historical example used in the text. While classical narratives often view Jesus through strict theological boundaries, the textual reality frames him completely differently. The text explicitly calls him an ayah, a living sign. He's presented as the ultimate structural example of a unified consciousness. He is a human being totally oriented toward the ultimate source, completely free from the distractions of Zukhruf. He brought pristine clarity. He literally states that he came to make clear what people were differing about. But check out the tragic conclusion. But the factions differed among themselves. Even when perfect clarity is standing right in front of them, embodied in a messenger, human consciousness still actively chooses to fragment. The problem is never the message, guys. It is always our divided internal state. So how do we escape this loop? That brings us to Section 6, Unifying Human Consciousness. Escaping this loop requires us to understand one final term, al-ilah. While traditionally we just translate this as God or deity, structurally speaking, it means the ultimate source toward which your consciousness is oriented. So unifying consciousness means taking all those fragmented loyalties, all those anxieties tied up in social prestige and shiny ornaments, and unifying them. You orient your mind entirely back to the single ultimate source of reality. And this brilliantly illustrates the two paths we can take. A unified consciousness responds to clarity by orienting toward reality, which results in a perfectly integrated, peaceful internal state directed at a single source. A divided consciousness, on the other hand, takes that exact same clarity but maintains its fragmented loyalties to status and ornaments, resulting in an internally diverted state, all while stubbornly convinced it's on the right path. Let's summarize what we've actually uncovered here, because these are universal psychological takeaways that literally apply to all of us. First, clarity is not our problem. Maintaining division is a choice we make. Second, the beautiful ornaments of life only distract us when we elevate them above foundational truth. Third, the most dangerous place to be is feeling perfectly guided while actually turning away from reality. And finally, true peace, true paradise, isn't about having the most material excess. It's the achievement of a pristine, uncorrupted, and unified consciousness. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to carry with you. The guidance is clear. The text is laying out the mechanics of our own minds. So I have to ask you, if clarity is already here, what beautiful ornaments are you allowing to divide your consciousness today? Take some time to really reflect on your own Zukhruf, and I can't wait to see you for our next explainer as we continue to decode the fascinating structures of our world.